Hello, Garland Nixon here. And have you ever watched a sporting event, basketball, football, whatever, where someone just throws the ball up at the end of the game, hoping for a prayer, hoping for anything to happen? You'll never find anybody doing that unless they're losing. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. So here's my point. The point I'm making is this, right? And in American football, basketball, whatever, right? You'll see somebody, and at the end of the game, some basketball player, he's way down on the other end of the court, and he just heaves the ball at the basket as hard as he can, hoping for a prayer, right? American football, they're losing at the end of the game. They just throw the ball up towards the end zone, hoping that somebody can catch it in the end zone and win. How about soccer? Somebody just kicks the ball wildly in the direction of the goal, hoping for a prayer, hoping for anything that'll somehow get them a goal and they can win, right? It's desperation. We'll try anything and we'll hope that something bails us out. But my point is this. You'll never find anybody doing that unless they're losing. You'll never see the winning team heave the ball up, kick madly and wildly towards the goal, hope for a prayer. They don't need a prayer. They're already winning. So let's talk about what's happening with the U.S., the twin vassals of the U.S. right now, the two poles of the destruction of the U.S. empire. That's what I would call it, the two poles of the empire, right? Right now, it's obvious when it comes to the Ukraine and Israel. They're inextricably linked in so many ways, particularly with the destruction of the empire, because the empire has stuck its neck out, right? The empire has walked as far as it can out on the end of this beam, hoping not to fall off. And at the end of the beam, both these things, both of, behind it, pushing it further, is both Israel and Ukraine. They are so similar. I mean, it's not, what's interesting, it's not an accident that one of the biggest, what is the word one of the most marked things that you can notice about Ukraine and Israel is the contradiction. The biggest thing that they have in common is the contradiction. Right? This is what stands out the most when it comes to Israel and Ukraine. More than anything else, the thing that links them the most is the contradiction. And here's the contradiction. You've got at the same time two puppet vassal projects of the U.S. empire. One of these puppet vassal projects runs around openly advocating for the very ideology that the other vassal product argues is the existential threat, which is their raison d'etre, right? Their reason for existence, their reason for living, the reason for all the things they do. So you've got Israel saying the reason for all the things that we do, the reason for our desperation, our anger, our fury, our paranoia, the reason for all of this is this very interesting ideology from the 1930s and 30s and 40s. Right, that grew in the 30s and 40s with our gentleman who had a very unique and interesting mustache that will always be remembered in history, right? So you got Israel saying that's our reasons for existence because of that ideology, because the mindset and the thoughts of that ideology, the beliefs of that ideology is the greatest threat to us and humanity and everything, right? That's why we're here. That's why we fight. That's why we do crazy stuff. Okay, all right, I'm to believe that. At the other end of the U.S. empire's project are a bunch of people who explicitly, unabashedly, and unapologetically sport the iconography of that very ideology. So you got a bunch of people saying, we stand here and fight to protect ourselves from this particular ideology. And the U.S. at the same time saying, yes, yeah, we support those guys. And anybody who doesn't support these guys is an anti-Semite, blah, blah, blah. At the same time, they're arming and supporting people who are saying, yep, you know that ideology they're supposed to hate? Yeah, we're it. We are the modern day incarnation of it. We push for it. We live for it. That's who we are. We have pictures of people who push that ideology. We sport today the very iconography of that ideology. What a tremendous, that is the most pronounced feature of the neocon ideology, is the contradiction between Ukraine and Israel. That we stand against this ideology as we arm, as we push, as we protect this ideology. And we stand against the very thing that this ideology does, which is genocide, which is ethnic cleansing. The reason we stand against this ideology is because it once did genocide and ethnic cleansing. Meanwhile, both the people who are espousing this ideology today in Ukraine are pushing for genocide and ethnic ideology of the ethnic and Russian speakers in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the people in Israel are pushing for ethnic cleansing and genocide of the people in the ethnic group that they see as genetically, intellectually, and culturally inferior, that must be dealt with in a final manner. So this great contradiction, actually, the contradiction is in the rhetoric. The contradiction is not in the actions of the two parties, because the actions of the two parties, the ideology of the two parties, the ethno-fascism of the two parties are identical. So they don't have a contradiction. They think alike, they act alike, they see the world alike, and they want to do the same things to their perceived adversaries and inferiors. The contradiction, they have no contradiction. They're just alike. The contradiction lies in the rhetoric of the US that says, yeah, we got to support both of these guys. And the one guy's over here, first of all, neither one of them are doing what they both say they're doing and what they both say they want to do. Hey, we want to do ethnic cleansing and kill all of these people. And the US says, yeah, they don't want to do ethnic cleansing and kill a bunch of people of different ethnicities. They say, we're going to commit war crimes. We can't wait to commit war crimes. Yay, war crimes are us. And the US says, yeah, they're not doing war crimes. Who would ever accuse them of such a thing? They don't want to do. So the US has these two groups that are doing the same thing, that think the same way, and that because they are under the protection and the umbrella of the US empire, feel that they can say anything they want. They don't even believe that they have a need to hide what they're doing. So the US says they ain't doing it. Their position is, we are doing it. And because the US protects us, we can say it. We can get away with it because the US is protecting us. So yes, we're doing it. We enjoy doing it. We intend to do it. We don't care who doesn't like it. And because the US is protecting us, we can get away with it. And the US says, oh yeah, they ain't doing it. Don't believe them. Don't believe these liars. They're madmen. They're insane. They're lying. Don't believe them. They're not really doing what they're telling the world that they're doing and what we're telling the world they're not doing. Hey, I'm a killer. Well, I'm protecting Garland, and I'm here to tell you that he ain't a killer. And I'm going to kill lots of people. Yeah, I'm protecting Garland, and I'm going to tell you, don't believe him. He's not a killer, and he's not going to kill lots of people. The man's a liar. You can't believe a word that he's saying. In fact, he's the nicest, sweetest little puppy. He's the real victim here. The real victim is the person that says they want to commit genocide. That's the US. So we have a contradiction between the actions of the two US projects. We have a contradiction between the espoused position of the US on human rights and genocide and all that stuff, and the actual actions of the parties that the US is arming and protecting. Now, let's move forward with this. So the first problem that the US has is that these two parties are losing, that they're both up against entities that they could not possibly win against for this reason. If in fact the Israelis, if in fact the Israel government regime, whatever you want to call it, was just bombing the Palestinians, and they just had a bunch of civilians that they were just going to genocide, then they'd easily win. All they'd have to do is do it. Go, okay, let's kill them all. But the problem is This is a civilizational war. This is the Muslim people and the Middle Eastern people in general. Not all are Muslim, but for the most part, I'm going to use the term civilizational. I'll refer to the Arabs, the Persians, the Muslims, right? Because the people of Islam, the people of the Muslim world, the people of the Middle East um, are upset by what Israel's doing, and they're by what the U.S. is doing through its proxy, and they're determined to fight back. And because it is, in fact, a civilizational conflict, Israel can't possibly win. They're going up against billions of Muslims here. So they can't win because the battle will be fought on all fronts. So you got the people in Malaysia and Indonesia, places there saying, hey, how can we get in? How can we cut off some shipping lanes to support the Palestinians, right? How can we stop going to Starbucks or McDonald's, right? You've got, right, which is part of the, as the U.S. calls it, a full spectrum war. Well, you've got the people of Islam and Muslim people all over the world uniting to fight in whatever way they can. So Israel is up against a force that it couldn't possibly win because there's too many of them, and the people are acting independently of their governments. So you have a resistance that has some here and there, some government support. But you have a resistance that has all of the people in the Middle East and the people of Islam, even the ones whose government are puppets for the U.S. empire, who are getting so much pressure on them, they have to tread very carefully for fear that they'll get their stinking heads cut off and get overthrown by their own people. So again, is it a Middle East or Muslim international conflict? No, it's more of a civilian conflict where and no other group other than in my opinion, other than the Muslims people, the Middle Eastern people, there's no other group that could do what they're doing because of the cohesiveness of their community, because of the cohesiveness of their people based on their religion, right? That's the glue that holds them together. And because of that, the people in the Muslim world, the people in Islam, their people are held together by their moral belief. It doesn't matter if you agree with them or not, right? What religion, their belief in their moral, civilizational foundation, they're going to stand together. They don't need a government. They don't need their government to say yay or no or yes or no. They have a foundational moral belief system that transcends government. So when they all see something that as a people they disagree with, they act as a people, irrespective of their government. So the interestingly enough, the U.S. empire, through its proxy, Israel, is at war with the Muslim people, and the Muslim people are going to push back, and you can't win that. It makes it even more difficult to fight the battle against people, because it's more like I don't want to use the word, it's insurgency, asymmetric, civilizational, whatever. It's not like you can just go attack a government facilities and bomb them. The people everywhere are in on it any way they can be. So the U.S. empire is at war with the Muslim people, and it can't possibly win because they're scattered out everywhere and there's too many of them. Ukraine is at war with, and because it's the U.S. using it as a puppet, as a proxy, and everybody knows it, that means that the U.S. empire in this instance is at war with the Russian civilization, which is very, very powerful, and really has very much a warrior spirit that when pushed to fight, they're going to damn fight. They're when, like the Muslims, these civilizations, when pushed to fight, they ain't scared to fight, right? And they will fight. And Ukraine is not a civilization that's fighting. It's nothing but a puppet for the U.S. And they're fighting against a civilization who believes that they're fighting to protect their civilization and their right to exist as a civilization and continue to exist as a civilization. And and might I add, and because the rest of the world, particularly in the global South and countries that have been victims of U.S. and European colonialism, imperialism, and Japanese colonialism and imperialism over the course of history, because there are a lot of other um, people around the world, peoples who have experienced that, they're going to join in and support Russia. Africa, Latin America, Asia, China, etc. They're going to support Russia because they understand the reality of what's going on, and they see it as a war between the U.S. empire and people who want to buck the U.S. empire and who want to push back and say, you don't run everything, you don't rule everything, and we're not going to do what you're telling us to do. So that means that the Ukraine project, these are both projects of the U.S. empire, also has no chance of winning. Never did, never will. Israel never did, never will. No chance of winning this thing on the terms and the definitions of winning that they have set forward. Well, excuse me, that they believe they've set forward. Really has nothing to do with them. So what we have now is, I believe, a recognition by both of these vassals and projects internally, because they have their own people inside who their job is to convince the just like the Europeans, the job of the European ruling class is to convince the people that they have democracy and they have independence and sovereignty, when in fact they don't. That's their job to do that. That's the job of everybody in the empire. That's the job of the vassal leadership class in the empire. Whether it's in Europe, you got to make the people of Germany and France and the UK think that they have independence and sovereignty, not that they're just tools of policy to be used at the whims of the U.S. empire and the neocons. Right? They can't believe that. They got to think they're independent. The same thing is the Israeli leadership and the Ukrainian leadership. They're just projects. They're vassals of the U.S. empire. So their job is to teach the people, to train the people, to get their people to believe that they have independence and sovereignty, and they're making their decision, and that the U.S. is supporting them. That the U.S. wants them to win and supporting them, rather than using them as a tool of policy. Now, it's kind of like you've probably heard people talk about a pathological liar. And some of us, you might have been around people who lie so much it gets to the point where they start believing their own lies. At some point, the pathology of the sociopaths that lead both of these countries is such that after a while, they start to believe their own lies. And they start to believe that they're independent and they're rulers and they have power, and that the U.S. empire supports them. It's pushing in the U.S. empire that they're somebody and they're important, not that they're just policy tools, weak policy tools. So now they're looking at it, and they also realize another dynamic. They start to wake up to realize that at some point I could be cast aside by the empire, right? That I'm running this thing and I've been given power, that I am a policy tool, but I'm running Israel or Ukraine or whatever, and I actually do have some power. And they think falsely that they have leverage over the empire. They're like, hey, I am a policy tool of the empire, and I'm running Ukraine or Israel. But I do have some leverage over the U.S. empire. You got no leverage over the U.S. empire. I put a bullet in you as quick as they will. Hey, the Russians killed Zelensky. Ooh, wonder how that happened. Oh, poor old Netanyahu ran over a mine. Ooh, accident. Things happen. It's war, right? Yeah, that you somehow are special. And I think that the leadership of Ukraine and Israel are in fear. They're looking on one side and they're seeing an unstable empire. They're seeing the people at the head of the empire saying, we got you covered. But they realize that behind the Biden administration, behind the neocons, the people are getting wary. The people are like, hey, this is screwed up. We don't like it. That even in the ruling elite of the U.S. empire, their support is waning. There are people that are saying, this is too much. Ooh, are we going too far? Oh, this is a problem. Oh, should we keep doing this? And they're getting afraid. And they're like, what the hell are we going to do? This thing might go bad and we'll end up dead. Thus comes the title of this video, Desperation Escalation, right? They're cornered. Netanyahu, Zelensky, and their people are cornered. There's people in their government that want to take them out. There's people that are their adversaries that want to take them out. They're not so sure that there's not people. And no, let me go different. They are sure that there is a faction in the U.S. empire's ruling elite that wants to take them out. And they're right. They understand that. They're reading the tea leaves. They know we got Biden. We got and his crew. But they're worried because what happens if Biden falls? And let's face it, I don't know if you've been seeing videos of this guy lately. He ain't exactly on the ball. Okay. So they're looking and they're like, our lot in life lies with Biden and Blinken and Newland and these people who at any given day their powers could go, that the ruling elite could wake up one day and say they're leading us down the path to hell and they could all be gone. And if that happens, if you're Netanyahu, you have to wonder how that, or Zelensky, you got to wonder how that works out for you, because you know that there's a faction that wants you to, how can I put this? However it's necessary to fall from power and grace. Right? So you got to worry that what happens if the Biden team loses power, and this faction that ain't so crazy about us starts to come up, then we're scapegoated. Then they drop this thing and they say, hey, well, if it wasn't for Zelensky and Netanyahu, everything would be fine. So, I mean, hey, things happen. It's a dangerous world that we live in. The mafia does, right? These criminals, this criminal organization that is the US government right now, the Neocon people, you know how they work. And Zelensky and Biden understand. They're looking over their shoulders. They're hearing footprints, right? Okay. So they're concerned and they're desperate. And remember what I started off with? Hail Mary. In a football game, you throw the football up and hope your guy catches it. In a basketball game, you heave. You're down by whatever, 3 points with a minute, seconds left. You throw the ball. For soccer, you need a score and the clock's running out. You just madly kick the ball towards the goal. It's a desperation heave, a Hail Mary pass, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're seeing. We saw two things in the last couple days. We saw Ukraine. Well, first Israel. Israel went to Syria and attacked Iran. They attacked an Iranian senior general and killed him and assassinated him, right? We saw Ukraine fire some cluster munitions or something into a Russian a civilian area, kill and damage a bunch of civilians. Why? Why did they do that? They're not stupid. They know what they're doing. Very specific reason. It is because they're losing, and both of them want to drag the U.S. into a war. Both of them. They want, number one, the Israelis want the Iranians to strike back in some way, shape, or form that's overt, so they can say, okay, the U.S., you've got to come in and attack Iran and save us, because the Israelis know right now they're on a path for destruction. Look, you don't have a country if your country can't survive. Your country can't eat. Your country is economy is destroyed. And right now, Israel has no economy. It has no economy. It's called up all its workers. It's put them in uniforms, and they're out there getting the crap shot out of them in the rubble. I heard it's 300 million a day or something that it's costing for the Israeli conflict, but that's just for the conflict on the ground. That's just what's happening in Israel. That's not including the armada of ships that the U.S. has in the Middle East that it's paying a fortune for. So it's very, very, very expensive, and the U.S. can't keep doing this for so long as it tries to, now it's got to rob the Russians to keep Ukraine going, which it still can't do. So the bottom line is that the Israelis are looking at this thing and they're saying, geez, our economy is gone. Our military is not doing so hot. The world hates our friggin' guts. And they're going to surely boycott everything that we make, everything that we sell. People are not going to want to do business with us. Countries all over the world are making it harder on us. The only thing we got is the U.S. now, but from Israel's perspective, but we don't have to worry, because no matter how much of a welfare country we become, the U.S. is going to pay. It don't matter what we need, U.S. is going to provide it. It don't matter what happens, the U.S. will let their own people starve to death before they'll let anything happen to Israel, and they are right. We'll starve to death and they'll send every dime to Israel. Israel's not worried about an economy. They don't need one. We're their economy. They're not worried about how much military stuff they shoot. They don't need to. We provide. So Israel knows that they are a conduit for the U.S. empire's power projection, that the U.S. empire says we use Israel for power projection in the oil-rich region of the Middle East. Therefore, if we lose Israel, we lose the ability to project power in the Middle East in the way that we want to. We can't have that. Let that happen. So screw the American people. All our money goes to Israel. But Israel knows that they can't just keep fighting forever. And for the next 50 million years, they can't go on forever and lose. And the longer they go, the more obvious it gets that they're going to lose. They can't fight this thing. They can't win this thing. They don't have the horsepower. They've got to drag the U.S. in. They're looking at the future and saying, we're running around in the rubble, losing people, losing tanks. How long can we keep taking this beating before, and all we're able to do is bomb them, kill a bunch of civilians. How long can we keep this up? They're like, it's going to go many, 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 many more months. Meanwhile, Hezbollah et al., these other groups are saying, well, we'll see how long you can keep this up because we ain't never going to stop fighting. If you want Israel, if you want to continue this war forever, then you might as well keep doing what you're doing because we got time. You got the watches. We got the time. Israel knows it can't hang on as long as the resistance groups that are fighting it. So what does it do? We have to up the ante. We got to try to bomb and kill an Iranian general so we can hopefully provoke Iran to do a big enough reprisal pushback act that we can justify the U.S. Okay, you have to come in and fight Iran now. The Israelis know they've got to bring the U.S. in and spread the war out and get the war going bigger and make the U.S. more desperate to try to make this into a World War III thing going on in the Middle East because that's their only hope, which it isn't even a hope. But it's a desperation pass. It's a Hail Mary pass when they got nothing else. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are in the same boat. The Ukrainians are like, look, we're screwed because for this reason. This is why they know they're really screwed. Okay, they're screaming for more money. The main reason they want the money is because the U.S., they're a welfare state. And they know if we don't get money from the U.S. soon, we can't pay the pensions for the people, right? We can't pay the politicians. We can't pay the soldiers. We can't pay the people because the U.S. pays all of our bills. If we don't get that money, the people are going to be in the street saying, I can put up with a lot, but I didn't get my pension check. What do I do now? So their only hope is to try to provoke the Russians into doing something stupid. So one of the things they said was, hey, did you know that a Russian missile entered Polish airspace, but then it came back out and then it, never hit anything in Poland, right? So therefore, I don't know, we got to, the U.S. has to attack, have to go in because a missile entered. Now, what do you think the odds are that that's bull crap? Remember the last time it was a Ukrainian S-300 missile went into Poland, hit a farm, killed some pig farmers, Polish people, and they were like, aha, we knew it. Them damn Russians, they attacked a pig farm in Poland because that's really a critical piece of military infrastructure. Why wouldn't the Russians go for a farm? But it didn't have to make sense because it was desperation, and the Russians said, give us some proof, and the U.S. was like, come on, man. We understand where you're coming from, but we ain't gonna, and a Ukrainian missile slapping into a farm in Poland isn't exactly what we need to go to World War III, to nuclear escalation. So no, they didn't buy it. And now desperation. Oh my God, a Russian missile has flown in and out of the airspace. Well, I don't believe it anyway. And even if that were the case, hey, we got to go to nuclear escalation of World War III because a missile flew through somebody's airspace and then flew back out, which, as I said, I don't think happened. But again, desperation. And, of course, the attack on Russian civilians. Clearly, it's an intentional attack on Russian civilians. And clearly, it is a provocation. We're going to do that. Do they think the Russian people are going to then go, okay, we got to call Vladimir Putin. They killed some of our people. Let's walk away. They know. They're not stupid. They understand that it will strengthen the resolve of the Russian people. It will anger the Russian people, and the Russian people will scream at their leaders, hit them harder, hit them even harder. Why are you moving so slow? Attack them even more. They know that that is what's coming. They know that's the reaction from Russia. They're not stupid. But because they are desperate, they know that their only hope and prayer, which they have none. But again, it's a Hail Mary pass. When the clock is running out and you're way down the field and you just kick that ball in the direction of the soccer goal because you're down 1-0. There's a 99.9999999% chance that ball ain't going in the goal, but you got no other options. the clock's running out. You got to kick it in a direction with the hopes that maybe it could happen, even though you know it probably won't. And once every 1,000 years, it'll bounce off some guy's head and go into the goal. You're hoping for that, but it ain't happening for you, right? Well, that's what we're up against. That's what we're looking at here. Then the Ukrainians and the more so, well, we'll talk about the Ukrainians now. This is a little different dynamic with the Israelis, but the Ukrainians attacking this, saying maybe, just maybe, the Russians will react in a way that we can then justify for the U.S. empire. You have to join this war, because that's their only hope, and it has been for a long time. And you know what? I've said this all along. There was a time way back, and some people will remember it, right? And Mark Sloboda, who I talk to and interview regularly, we and I discussed it, and he agreed. This was early, when the Ukrainians would do something. They'd attack Russian civilians, Donetsk, they would do something, right? And people would say, you know, they sent a drone at the Kremlin and they like bent the flagpole and knocked some tiles off the roof. And people were like, oh man, the Russians got to go all out there. They got to do. And I'm like, I think the Russians understand. As we say in the boating community, you know, if you're heading towards this particular buoy, you've plotted your course, and you've plotted you've used a dead reckoning to figure out what the tide is, what the wind is, and now you know if I head at a degree of 180 degrees for 4 hours at 11 knots, that I will reach this point. That's my prediction. And what do we say? You've calculated everything out. You know where you're going. You know all of the factors, and you know what, and you're heading in that direction at that speed. Maintain course and speed. Does it seem like the tide and the wind are pushing you in the wrong direction? Sure. If you look at that, it seems like they're pushing you in the wrong direction, but you've already calculated the wind speed and the tide into your course. And because of that, you know that the wind's going to push you off a little bit, but that because of the course and speed, that's going to compensate for the wind and tide. And you're going to end up at this exact point if you run for 11 knots at 6 hours. Maintain course and speed. Hey, Garland, I'm looking ahead at the lighthouse we're supposed to be heading towards, and it looks like we're heading away from it. Don't worry. I already calculated that into our course. Maintain course and speed, and we will get to that point in exactly X amount of hours, right? It's the same for the military. I believe, number one, that the Russians have calculated into what they're doing the reality that there will be some civilian attacks. There will be some desperation Hail Mary attacks. There will be these pinprick attacks where they fire a missile and it hits something here or there, Crimea, wherever the hell, Belgorod. I think they've already calculated that these things will happen because it's a war, and these things happen in a war, and they have a desperate opponent. I think they've already ahead of time. For instance, I think they have targets selected. Because apparently the Russians, after that's Belgorod incident, they hit some command centers, they said various other things. I think they have a selection of targets. And the selection of targets says, if the Ukrainians kill civilians or do this or that, you go into this target group. You immediately hit this target group. They've got a target group selected. All you do is boom, boom, boom. You hit some keys. You put them right into the missiles. This target group is assigned to these missiles. This thing. Boom. Target group Alpha. That is a response to this. Target group, Delta, target group, Whiskey, Tango, whatever. These are target groups are already prepared. They understand, and they have prepared. They have all kind of contingency plans. So it's like, oh, they hit Belgorod. What are the Russians going to do? I don't think the Russians are like scratching their head. Let's have a meeting. I don't know what to do. They just killed a bunch of civilians. No, I think the Russians are like me or you. They know they're in a war. They know they're looking ahead, and they say, okay, what do we got? Well, Vladimir Putin, yes, they attacked Belgorod and they killed a bunch of civilians. And he's like, okay, you guys know what to do, don't you? Yes, target group Alpha or Whiskey or Tango. I think Whiskey. What about you? Well, I've talked to the Security Council. They want to go with target group Echo. Hey, they're the Security Council. Go for it. Click. And he goes back. Hey, pass me that borscht. I got to finish my lunch, right? So They've already got these things planned out. None of this is a shock to the Russian Security Council. None of this is a shock to the Russian military leadership, to the Russian political leadership. None of this stuff is a shock. They've had it happen over and over again, and they know it happens, and they already have contingency plan after contingency plan. Hey, these guys are probably involved. Next time that this happens, these guys are going to get hit in a missile strike. They're done. And they constantly have evolving target groups that says, if they do this, this is their target group. And there's probably levels where they can up the ante. What happens? Well, if they send another drone and they hit the Kremlin and they bend another flagpole and knock some more tiles off, target group Echo. Well, what happens if they hit Belgorod and they kill 20 civilians? Target group Tango. They've got plans. They know what the hell they're going on. And Russia will not be deterred from its overall mission. If you're winning, you ain't going to be deterred. Maintain course and speed. So the Russians have I believe they have a military plan, a military outline of what they're going to do, their goals, objectives, their strategy and some tactics, and that's going to move forward. And when these types of, we'll even call them this, not to belittle the lives of the innocent civilians, I'll call them a pinprick attack, only because it is an attack that is determined to have a political outcome, to entice the Russians into doing something that they wouldn't normally do. And it's not going to affect the Russians' military strategy, tactics, etc. and goals and outcome. Not much. I think the Russians already know who the people are. Like, oh boy, now the Russians know that they're not going to be able to save or bargain with Zelensky. I think they already kind of figured that out a while back. Right. I think something about these guys running around with patches with like tattoos of you know who on them and dog-eared copies of Mein Kampf in their backpacks. I think that was pretty much an indication to the Russians that they were not going to be able to have an amicable resolution to the conflict with these people. So I don't think they need any new information to let them know that this ain't exactly a regime that they can work out a fair and reasonable deal with, where all sides are no. They know what they're dealing with. And these things, they don't, some people say, well, it reinforces it. They don't need reinforcement. If you're a sheep and you see a wolf standing outside with his baring his teeth, glaring at you saying, I want to eat you, you don't need anything to reinforce to you that this guy intends to do you harm. You're not going to be like, well, now that the wolf has growled, I think he really wants to eat me. He's a wolf. The nature of him being a wolf tells you that he wants to kill you and eat you, right? When the Russians looked across the border and they saw a bunch of goose-stepping Sieg Highland guys, at that point they realized what they were up against. What are they doing? Well, they're goose-stepping. Anything else? They're screaming Sieg Heil, and they're holding their hand over their heart, and then they're putting it to the sky, and they're saying, power to the Fuhrer or something. At that point, if you're a Russian, you got a pretty good idea that this ain't exactly a guy that you can sit down and have tea and crumpets with and work out a deal. No, at that point, somebody's got to go, and it's got to be him. So, no, this is not new information to the Russians to teach them that now they're dealing with some kind of extremist. I think they figured that out a while. I think they figured that out, when they came across the border, when they made a deal. And when Boris Johnson et al. Said no deal, I think, number one, if you're honest about it, even if the people who struck that deal on, quote, allegedly on behalf of the Kiev regime had came back to Kiev and said, hey, guess what? We got good news. We got a deal with the Russians. They'd have killed them. If they'd have went back to those goose steppers and said, hey, great deal. We went to Turkey. We sat down with the Russians. We got a deal signed. And here it is, that the Banderites would have killed them. If Bojo hadn't have went there and killed the deal, when it got back to Kiev, the Banderites would have killed the people who signed the deal, who made the deal. There was not going to be a deal. Don't fool yourself. Never was there going to be a deal. If Bojo didn't kill it, the Banderites would have killed those who signed off of it. No deal was coming. And I think at that point, the Russians realized there ain't no hope of dealing with these people. They did, in fact, shoot one of the guys who did the deal, right? Killed him in public, left his body laying on the street. So bottom line is this. The Russians have for some time known what they were up against, and they're dealing with it appropriately. And these desperate escalatory moves by the Kiev regime, while they are a sign of desperation and an attempt to escalate, they ain't going to work because the Russians are maintaining course and speed. And here's what I will say the Russians will do. They understand the importance of the PR perspective of these and the importance of the fury and anger that it will generate within the Russian population. So when this happens, the Russians have a target group. They will hit target group echo. Boom, 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 boom. They will then release something to the people in their country and say, yes, those sons of bitches, we fixed them. We hit target group echo and we killed, and they'll say who they killed. Whether they killed them or not, I don't know, but they're going to say what they did. Because, I mean, while they do, in fact, care about their people, and they are concerned about the fact that they're losing people, they understand that in the long term, that they're going to lose people in the short term. That's the nature of war. Russia, put it like this, they ain't going to lose 30 million people this time. They understand that they're going to have to fight and lose a few people so they don't lose 30 million people again. And they understand, Russia understands the nature of war. 20 or 30 people were killed in Belgorod. Terrible tragedy, horrible, unthinkable. 100 or even a couple of hundred people injured, unthinkable tragedy. But 30 million people, millions starved, dead, killed, murdered by the same people who espoused the ideology of the Ukrainian leadership today during World War II. So they understand that the potential is there for much worse. So they're going to fight. They're going to take some punches. There's no fight you're going to get in where you ain't going to probably take a punch or two. At the end of the fight, you won. So what if you got a couple bruises? But you went. The idea is to win the fight and go home alive. And these are bruises. But the Russian leadership will not be distracted, and they're not shocked or surprised by this. And it's going to likely happen again. Look, the reason, if you think about this from a perspective of just military strategy, if you are the Banderite regime and you're running out of military equipment, you're running out of shells and rounds and missiles, right? Okay. And you want to win. Aren't you going to aim all of your shells and rounds and missiles at Russian military? You want to weaken their military so you can, advance on them, right? You want to hit them. You want to take out soldiers, but you don't want to waste it killing civilians. The civilians are not armed. They're not coming across the line at you. This is counterproductive, actually, to any military strategy. It's like there's 10 guys coming at it. What do we got? We got 9 bullets. What are you going to do? Let's fire. Let's shoot those dogs over there first. Really? Why? We'll show them, but we only got 9 bullets and we got 10 guys charging us to kill us, and they're violent and they got knives and they're going to gut us alive, right? Shouldn't we protect ourselves from the advancing hordes with the few bullets that we have left? No, we'll shoot their dogs. That'll really piss them off. No, we're wasting bullets. It is counterproductive. We need to shoot at the guys who are rushing us, who intend to kill us. Because if we waste our bullets shooting at their dogs, we're going to get gutted like a fish when they get there with their knives, right? So it's counterproductive. So then you'd have to say to yourself, if the Ukrainians are doing something that's counterproductive, why? They apparently don't believe it's counterproductive. Why? Because here's what they know also. Let me do it another way. Okay. 3 is the international help sign. I used to do search and rescue, right? On the water, on the bay, search and rescue, right? And 3, if you've got a gun, right? And you want help. I got a gun and I need help. I fire 3 rounds in the air. Pow, pow, pow. If you're out in the wilderness, if you're doing tracking, if you're looking, we used to do that stuff, tracking for people who were lost in the wilderness. You hear 3 shots, pow, pow, pow. There's a good possibility that is a signal for help. Fire 3, signal for help, right? So here's the other side. I'm being attacked by 100 guys, and we're here. We got 9 bullets, right? What do I say to my guy? Fire 3 bullets in the air. Why? Because I got help over the horizon, over the next mountain. I've got 1,000 guys over there that can come help defend me, right? But they don't know I'm in trouble. If I can alert them, look. If I just try to fire these 9 bullets against these 1,000 guys that are killing me, I'll run right at it out of bullets, and then I will be killed, right? I can fire into the crowd, then they're going to kill me. My only hope is I got 1,000 guys over here. So what are you going to do? I'm going to fire 3 rounds in the air. Well, that would appear to be a waste. Couldn't I find them at the enemy? No. It is actually my only hope. If I fire 3 rounds in the air and my reinforcements over the hill hear it and say, hey, I think Echo Company's in trouble. I just heard them fire 3 rounds. And they get me on the radio. What's going on? It's Echo Company. Come in. We're being surrounded. They're going to take us out. All right, we're on the way. I fire those 3 rounds to try to get help, because firing at the enemy is a waste of time. I don't have enough ammunition to protect myself. But if I can fire 3 rounds, I can notify my help. Help comes in, then I have a chance of survival. If I can just hold out long enough for my help to get here, I can survive. Guess what? The Banderite regime knows good and damn well that firing those missiles at Russian soldiers is a waste of time, because they're going to get overrun anyway, because they don't have any nearly what they need. They got like the equivalent of 9 bullets against 1,000 people who are coming at you. So rather than fire those last few missiles and rounds they have at the Russians, which is only going to piss the Russians off more that are attacking them, they now say, we got no hope. If we fire these missiles at the Russians, it ain't going to do no good. We'll kill a couple of them and then they'll overrun us. Here's the plan. Let's take our few last missiles we have. We'll fire them at the civilians. Then maybe the Russians will get so crazy they'll do something stupid and we can get the US to come in and help bail us out. That's all it is. That's what that is. It is a desperation ploy, because they don't have enough weapons. They don't have the military wherewithal to win, and they know, so they're throwing up a Hail Mary hoping they can call in the cavalry. That's all that is. Meanwhile, what's Israel? Israel's sitting there, we're winning, we're defeating, we're beating Hamas. And then I go every day, I go online, right? And I'm like seeing all these videos, and it's like an Israeli tank. And some friggin' guy literally pops out of a building with no weapon in his hand to be seen, but he's got like a satchel. He runs up to the tank, literally heaves it under the tank, runs like a bat out of hell back into his whatever he came out of, and he's gone, and blows the tank to hell. Boom, blows up. And then there's all these secondary explosions where the tank's rounds are going off, and everybody in that tank didn't make it, right? So one friggin' untrained guy who just had a pair the size of bowling balls, who, hey, you killed my family, what do I give a shit? I'm going to run over here and blow, and if I die, so be it. You blew up and killed everybody that I know. My whole neighborhood's dead. At this point, I might as well go too, but I'm taking you, these sons of bitches in this tank are going with me. And over he runs. Here, Ahmed, here's the charge. Run over, throw it under a tank, blow him to hell. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Allahu Akbar. Boom. He runs over, throws it under there. He runs back in and survives. Nobody in the tank survives. So I'm watching this every day, and I'm like, I don't think the Israelis are going to necessarily win this one. And meanwhile, on TV everywhere, there's people protesting, they're arresting people. Jewish people are like leading the protest, saying, hey, man, not in my name. This crap is I'm seeing like people who are Holocaust survivors, grandfathers, Holocaust survivors, saying, hey, this is wrong. Kind of looks like the Holocaust to me. Israel can't continue to stand up to that. So what do? We got to try to do something. What the hell good does it do for them to bomb Damascus? Does that stop Hezbollah? Just pisses them off. Does that stop the Palestinians who are running around the rubble heaving satchel charges under their tanks? Just pisses them off all the more. Well, fix you, sons of guns. Here's another satchel charge under your tank, right? But their only hope is what? We got to bring the United States in, and hopefully we can antagonize the resistance to the point where they'll do something that the U.S. will say, we got to join in. But the resistance weren't born yesterday, just like the Russians. They know we got time. They know we're going to lose people. They know we can retaliate in our own time, in our own way. We're winning, and you're throwing up a Hail Mary, and that Hail Mary ain't going to work. And that's what's happening. That's where we are now. You can look for, as we get closer to the end, as Israel and Ukraine get closer to having to come to grips with the reality that they have lost, they have no chance of winning, you can expect more desperation escalation exercises. The more and more they're going to say, well, what do we do now? Israel wants to literally attack Iran. They want to, whatever they can, a missile, a plane, a drone. Now, guess what? Let's see if I can find this. Recently, I'm not going to bother to look. but you probably saw this because everybody in the chat here pays attention to what's going on. A former Israeli prime minister came out and said, look, we have to admit we attacked Iran on Iranian territory. We sent a drone in that blew up, right? Why would they come out now and admit to an attack on Iranian soil, which is an act of war, right? So Israel comes out in the middle of this thing, they kill an Iranian general, Iran shakes it off. Ugh, yeah, so that didn't bother us. Is that all you got? You know, it's like somebody punches a guy, wham! And the guy looks at him, shakes his head. Come on, is that all you got? That's what Iran's doing. They throw a punch on Iran, Iran just shakes it off, says, keep coming, man, let's go. We're going to knuckle junction, right? And so now Israel's like, crap. I got an idea. You know, it's like, hey, we'll blow up an Iranian general. Boom, man, that'll Iranian general. That'll get them, and the Iranians just shake it off. That's all you got? Oh, crap. Oh, hey, I got an idea. Here's what we'll do. We'll bring out some old, dusty old former prime minister. And the guy's like, hey, guess what I did when I was prime minister? What? I literally committed an act of war against Iran, sent a drone in, blew stuff up on their own. What do you think about that, Iran? Hey, if I were you, I'd retaliate. You know, Iran, I mean, hey, you can't put up with that. I mean, I'm leaking that out. I'm just throwing that out there. I did really attack you guys. Come on, time to attack. What are you going to do? You're going to blow our cities up? You're going to send missiles? Go for it, Iran. Iran's like shaking their head. That all you got? Come on, idiot. You've attacked us in every way. Don't you remember? You sent in a drone and killed our scientists. You sent in spies and you tried to start a color revolution. Come on, like we really don't know the games that the U.S. empire plays. Get out of here with that. You did it. We knew you did it when you did it. This is nothing shocking to us. So keep doing what you're doing. We'll keep doing what we're doing. The Iranians ain't stupid. They're like the Russians. They're simply saying, look, we have calculated that in order to come out to continue to resist Israeli occupation of Palestine, that we're not going to do it without taking a bruise here and there. We're not going to win this thing without taking a punch. You can't go into a fight not prepared to take a punch. If you are trained to self-defense, one of the things you're trained is, you know, to defend yourself. You know, if you do your overhead block right, you do some kind of an overhead block. Boom, somebody doing boom, I'm blocking overhead, right? Which should be actually on an angle. But here's what you know. Some guy comes down with a stick and your block is up here, right? Your block is, you know, you're blocking your head. You know, they're going to come down here, right? Let's say they come down with a stick or a pole or something and they hit that and they break your arm, right? Here's what you know. I now got a broken arm, but he didn't get me on the head. So since he broke and destroyed and mangled my arm, I did triage. What do I want to lose in a fight? Do I want to take a broken, manged up arm, or if he hits me on the head, I'm either dead or I'm out of the fight? If he breaks my arm, I can still turn and run. I still got another arm. I can strike him. I can do something. I can step in, right? So that thing comes down, hits my arm and breaks it. But I still have the wherewithal to come around and clap his ear, or when that comes down and my arm, the thing flies, maybe I can strike with this other hand and hit him in the eyes and he like stops and then I turn around and I run off with my arm dangling. But the bottom line is that is designed to say, I'm going into a fight. At some instances, there's a knife. I may say I'm going to get cut here, but I'm not going to get, you know, I'm going to get cut somewhere, but I'm not going to get cut in one of my vital organs. So I may block a knife and take a cut here because I don't want to get cut on a vital organ, right? So the bottom line is this. You may know I got to take a hit here so I can survive. Strategically, I'm going to take a hit. I'm going to take a punch. I'm going to take an injury because ultimately I want to be able to continue fighting or at least continue living or at least continue fleeing, right? But the same way, okay, by the same token, the resistance knows we're going to take some losses. We're going to take some hits. We're going to take some bruises, but we're going to continue to fight. I don't know if we can win. We believe if we can win, but we know we have to continue to fight. And in order to continue to fight, we cannot delude ourselves into thinking that we're not going to take some hits. And so when Israel does this, hey, we did this or that to Iran, Iran's like, I knew we got to take some hits. We know that. We understand we got to take some bruises and bumps. We knew that going in. So you're not shocking us. We don't have to react. Think about this. People always project their thoughts onto other people. So the Israeli regime are reactionaries. They're extremist reactionaries. So what they know is this: if somebody does something to us, we'll freak out and act out emotionally. Somebody stubbed the toe of Netanyahu. Oh my God, you sons, but you're going to get it now. He's going to go mad like a raging child. Attack, throw everything we got, do anything we can. They're going to go mad. They're not going to stop and think to themselves strategically, how should we act? What's in our best interest? They're just going to start throwing punches in any direction they can, and then later on say, oh, maybe we shouldn't have did that. Oh, that was a bad idea. The resistance ain't going to do that. The Russian ain't going to do that. They can't afford it. They have too big of an adversary behind the puppet that they're fighting. So they can't afford not to think and strategize, and they can't afford not to expect that they're going to take some hits. So they're ready for it. So these Hail Mary things ain't going to work, because both the Russians and their supporters, China, etc., and the Middle Eastern Muslim worldwide civilization that is at war with the US empire, both realize that this is a long-term fight. They got to hold out for the long term, and it's in their best interest not to be reactionary against any specific incident to maintain course and speed. They got a plan. They have calculated the wind. They have calculated the tide. They have calculated all the factors that are going to affect their journey to get to this particular buoy, this particular lighthouse, this particular point in the sea, and they're going to maintain course and speed to that point. And the things that happen in between are not going to change them. In fact, if the tide, the wind picks up now, oh no, the wind is picked up, I just have to recalculate now from where I am. I'm going to recalculate. I may need to stop, whatever the case may be. I may need to keep going, but I'm going to recalculate from a particular point, including the new factors, and then I'm going to boom. Once I recalculate, I'm going to say now we need to go 176 degrees instead of 180 degrees because the wind changed and this changed and that changed, and now I've recalculated. I'm going to. That's what the Russians and the resistance are going to do. If something happens to change the factors affecting how they're going to get to the ultimate goal, they're going to recalculate, but they're going to come up with a new plan that includes maintaining course and speed. This is how we're going to get there. And so the futility of these desperate escalatory acts is going to be obvious over time, because they're just going to do it. Throw this at them, didn't work. Throw that at them, didn't work. Throw something bigger at them, didn't work. That's all we're getting, desperate escalatory acts. But I believe that the people on the other side have already taken this into account. It's not going to make a difference. All right, here's what I'm going to do. Let me take a peep and see. Wow, this is the last day of the year. If there are any, not much in the way of super chats, but it's the last day of the year. Who cares? Thanks a lot, Conan the Barbarian. How about this? A different perspective says, once again, in the absence of law, the people have raised a beast. What Israel are they mimicking? People of Moses' day. Well, keep in mind something. I'm not a religious person, but even if I was, I would not in any way equate the U.S. Neocon imperial military outpost with what any religious rhetorical construction or philosophical or religious construction of what Israel is or should be. I would not conflate any religious thoughts of Israel, religious concepts of Israel, with what is nothing but an imperial military outpost in the Middle East. It has nothing to do with Israel or the Bible or the people of Moses' day. They don't care about that crap. This is about, hey, we need a fort. We need a military outpost. As Joe Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create it to address our interest in the region. Simple as that. That's it. So you're mistaken if you discuss Israel through the lens of historical religious context. They don't care about that crap. That's for us to discuss. That's not for them. Behind the scenes, they're like, hey, we got to keep all of this stuff, military stuff and intelligence stuff in this region because there's lots of oil. That's all they care about. How about this? Oh, Gestoris Panama says, thank you, Garland, for your work, analysis, and humor. May 2024 be less awful than it seems. Love from Panama City, Central America. Thank you very much. Man, I'd love to come to Panama sometime. So what a wonderful place. Panama City. That's someplace. I love South America. I'd like to go to do a trip and hit every city in South America. Although my buddy got robbed in Panama. Well, he got into what he thought was a taxi cab, but it wasn't. It was just some crooks, and they, took his money and what have you. All right, I think that's it. Let's look at Rockfin. We got some people over at Rockfin. David Boteller says, thanks. Oh, thank you, David. Nicholas Meering. Thanks a lot, Nicholas Meering. All right, everybody. Oh, man, that's an hour. Wow, an hour on the dot. Jeez, well, the time flies. All right, well, thanks a lot, everybody. Enjoy yourself. Have a wonderful time. Don't forget, if there's any way you can afford it, everything's going across the bottom. But, Patreon, you know how that works. Buy me a coffee, PayPal, all that stuff is there. Cash App, all that stuff is there. So thanks a lot, anybody that can do that. And go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Become a member. It costs absolutely nothing to become a member on Rockfin. If they throw me off YouTube, you know where to find me immediately. And might I add that if you can afford it, you can become a subscriber on Rockfin. It's $14.99 a month. That keeps Rockfin on the air because, as you already know, they don't have advertisements and stuff like that. So if you can afford to become a subscriber on Rockfin, I would certainly appreciate it. If you can't, that's fine. Everybody, smash the like button, assault, beat the like button, beat it to a pulp, and make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Oh, we got somebody else that I missed. Eric Suarez says, hey, Alex Sobbs free, Eric. Happy New Year, Garland. Thank you for your work and what you do to make us think about the reality of the world. We'll be here next year as well. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, wait, a different perspective. I stand corrected. Oh, thank you. A different perspective. You stand corrected for what? I don't know. I must have missed that. Maybe that was a different perspective before. But at any rate, a different perspective. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for the super chats. Thanks for everything. And as I said, make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Peace. I'm out.